So walk me through this so I can understand how we got to this point, Tom.
Well, it's a complicated question, Dan, because let's start with that game on last Sunday, a week ago, against the Bills. We all saw the same thing on TV, which is that Tua gets up, shakes his head, takes a few steps, kind of loses his balance, takes a couple more steps, then his teammates kind of grab him. I think that everyone watching is saying that's somebody who has a concussion. He goes into the locker room, I think it was in the second quarter, gets checked out, comes out in the third quarter, and the word comes quickly from the Dolphins that it was, in fact, a back injury and not a head injury that Tua had suffered, which is how he ends up getting cleared. Then, obviously, 4 days later, he's being checked every day. They're required under the protocols to check him the day after the game because he had a concussion check. They voluntarily do it just to monitor, just to make sure each day leading up to the Thursday night game. And then he suffers one of the most horrific looking concussions that we've seen in the modern NFL. So while that's going on, the NFLPA, which initiated an investigation, which they're allowed to do under the CBA, right after the Sunday incident, is beginning its investigation. The day after the Cincinnati game, they interview both the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant and the Dolphins team physician who had been in on the concussion check. By Saturday, they had informed the UNC that they were terminating him. My understanding of why the unaffiliated neurologist was terminated was a combination of he did not understand his role as the UNC, did not understand what he was supposed to be doing, even though, again, this is an individual who under the CBA has to be a highly qualified surgeon or neurospecialist. They're approved by the NFL and NFLPA until they're not. But did not seem to understand that he did not work for the league, that he was there on behalf of the welfare of players, and then also that he became hostile in the interview process, which led the union to believe that he did not have players' best interests at heart, and therefore they exercised their right to terminate him. Now, I would also tell you, from what I understand, the league was not happy that they terminated him, and that word got out quickly after they informed the player reps that they had taken that step, which then leads you to the statement we had on Saturday night, joint from the NFL and NFLPA, saying they have agreed to address the gross motor instability, which is in essence the loophole that allowed them to say it was his back, not his head, and that gets him back onto the field. My understanding is they've already agreed on the parameters. They're working out final language. There's a process they have to go through to finalize it, but that's going to be changed here. But that statement also said the investigation's ongoing to this point. I'm paraphrasing here. There's been no wrongdoing found. In other words, and no one at this point has ruled that Tua actually had a concussion last Sunday. And what the Dolphins told you this morning is the same thing that I've been told by many people involved here, which is based on all the medical information. He didn't have a concussion. That still leaves open the question, number one, how did the doctors come to the conclusion that Tua's back, not his head, caused the stumble? And if the concussion checklist, as they call it, was fully checked and no protocols were violated, then it becomes, I think, relatively obvious that the public appetite and the players' appetite for what players should go back onto the field, that this fell below the line.
But go back to what a former quarterback told me over the weekend. If you were at a party and you saw somebody get up and then stumble again, would you let that person drive?
Well, and that's precisely what they're trying to eliminate now with these updated protocols. What the union wants here, and it's going to be some form of this, is eliminating the medical judgment aspect of the gross motor instability. In other words, if you stumble, you are out of the game. And there's not somebody deciding, well, it was because of this. And remember, these are doctors. You go to your doctor, you don't just say, hey, doc, what's wrong with me? Like, you probably go, hey, my foot's hurting or my back's hurting. So the first thing they're doing is asking Tua what's going on. If he's saying it's my back, then they're taking that into consideration. Again, it's up to them to make the medical judgment. What this updated protocols will do now is say there is no judgment. You're simply coming off the field. But that also could potentially have unintended consequences, which from what Dr. Alan Sills, the NFL's chief medical officer, told us yesterday is part of the conversation now. I mean, think about a situation where Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs a couple of years ago got hit, gets up, he stumbles, he's got a knee injury, his knee buckles for a second, and he wobbles and gets back up. Well, now is Patrick Mahomes being pulled off the field in a playoff game? If, in fact, the language is that clear, The answer will be yes.
Now,
And
when
that's
does
the
this
trade-off
start,
for
Tom?
potentially pulling off players from the field, even if they don't have concussions.
Okay, but when does this new language get inserted here? Is this starting now?
The hope is it will be for week 5,
Okay.
that it will be in effect for week 5, though by putting out that statement on Saturday, that was intended, if people weren't already, to put everyone in the league on notice that when in doubt, get them out. I think there were about a dozen players yesterday who were announced as being evaluated for concussions. The only one I'm aware of who went back into the game was Justin Reed, the chief safety. Guys like Brian Hoyer, Tyrod Taylor did not return to the game. That's not abnormal. A lot of the players who get checked for concussions end up having concussions and being held out of the game. But I think it's fair to say everybody is on high alert right now, understanding the scrutiny here, and justifiably so, for exactly what happened with Tua.